intense. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, it takes such a village. I mean, like the story of Henry and what were the Sarah and Jennifer. Mm-hmm. And like, just to see your response, Pep, like I was right there with you, hearing Curt tell the story, hearing you tell the story, Curt, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And Pep, you just sat with it because the weight of it was, I think this is why you sat with it. It was so intense. And like to see that family did get a village that came around them and that they're functioning and thriving. And I mean, I don't know if they're thriving, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the stories that I tell here are composites.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, the essence of this story is factual.
Right. And that it takes a village. And then I think, some people will say, well, I've tried to talk to people and I get nowhere. But then I think, okay, it's the what of numbers? It's just numbers. Like, say something. And if that person doesn't listen, say something to someone else.
Yep.
And you will get someone that listens. You just will get that somebody that responds. Well. Yes. Yeah. You're going to get water.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was out running errands the other day, and it was a while ago, and I went to the pharmacy, and I love my pharmacist. And, I had a bunch of errands I was just running. I ran in, I got it. And then I saw her over the counter, the high counter, and I'm like, hey, Natasha, I said, you've been out a while. And I thought she would have been on vacation. And she came over and I was racing. And she came over and she paused for a second. And so I paused and she got teary and she said, my dad died last week. And that's why I've been out. And it was like the world stopped. And it was probably a 2-minute at most conversation. She's working. It's not, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And it was just in that moment, and then that pause before she said that, I thought, I think she was looking to see if, am I racing out the door or am I really checking in?
Right.
It takes a village.
Right. And she took the risks if that's what you were doing.
Yeah. Yes.
By coming over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm just so so proud of you, Amy, that you pause. Cause I know that there are times when I'm I don't have time for this conversation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Cause I'm this I got things I got to get done.
Right. I have the thing at 2 and I'm running late for the thing at 1. And yeah. And it was very short,
right.
Brief conversation. And then I thought the overwhelmingness, there are different levels of trauma, right? If we are in it, it's where do I even start?
Right.
It's tell your story. You don't even have to understand it or tell an ounce of your story.
Right.
And then to see someone respond like Pep did to your story, it's he sees the weight of it. He feels the weight of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep putting the bucket in the well.
Yeah. Sometimes you realize you got a hole in your own bucket and it's your own fault that you don't have friends. Sometimes you're the problem too.
Then you got to look at your bucket. You do have to check your bucket. If there's not water in it, check for holes.
Right.
Well, I think about that, and we'll get to this with Mark Wallen's stuff in generational trauma. I think about my mother's experience of being left. And that wasn't just perception. I mean, she was summarily left by her mother, by her dad, by her brothers, and then by like the suicide of her brother. And you know, the general tone and tenor of we got to make sure that we do things in the right way, so that God doesn't leave. Right. So that we don't, we want to also, you know, like, so I mean, like, I wouldn't have known this at the time, but there's this felt sense of like, we're doing everything we can to make sure that. And so even that story that I tell about, you know, at her 80th birthday, where like, you know, she going to make sure that I don't leave without knowing that that's what she's doing. I think I've received that. I think I've received a certain sense of people leave.
Yeah.
People leave, and I don't. And you know, some of it is lived experience. In that, like I remember, I've been going to funerals since I was 3 years of age.
So people have been leaving.
Right. So because my parents, because they were older, like there were just a lot of older people who were older. Like, so I'm going to funerals with people. And it's just like, yeah, you're going to another one, I do this. So people leave. And then with my dad's death, like at the same time that people leave, like I have already, though, I may have told you this. You know, I remember the morning that my dad died, we came back from the hospital and people start to come to the house when they hear, right? This small town, people are coming. I was very aware as a 17-year-old, newly minted 17-year-old. I was very aware that everybody else was far more upset about this than I was. Have I said that before? Yeah.
Let's say it again, because
Well, I mean, so like I was aware that was the case, and I was like also like, there's something odd about this. Like why is, like, I'm aware that this is the case, and I just want to keep shooting basketball. That's all I want to do. Like, I'm going to be fine. Like, it's like I'm outside watching this happen. Like it's not happening to me. And it's so this awareness that simultaneously I have this deep hunger for being known and seen, and this longing for people to I want people to want to be with me. While I simultaneously don't allow it to happen when they actually do.
Yeah.
Because there's this terror of like, once it happens, like it's going to stop. You're going to go.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it's the
very thing you long for.
It's a catch 22.
Right.
Yeah. So wouldn't Wolin say that part of that was your experience, part of that was your experience with the way your mother was around you, but then part of it is in your DNA because of the trauma that your mother experienced?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's tough because the part that is in our DNA, you know, is kind of like, it's the air you're breathing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not that you have to respond to it forever in the way that you have, but the potential for your being prompted to respond to it in that way might not ever go away.
Right.
It's a matter of becoming increasingly aware of, like, oh, that's it, that's that thing.
And it's so familiar that it's sometimes hard to even notice.
Right. I mean, how could it be anything other than what I have understood it to be?
Right.
Right.
You know.
Then we have to notice the air we breathe.
Right. And I think that's why, you know, part of my part of the focusing on these last couple of episodes of just inviting people to pay attention to is what I'm trying to get at. Is being attentive, being attuned without condemnation, but also being open to, when you discover what you sense and see, to pause and not simply continue down the road of the same narrative that you've always told that helps you explain that thing that you're observing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. I mean, I'm working right now with a couple of patients, along with a couple of other therapists. It's been interesting as a side note. In my training and in the training that I know that many people have received, there's kind of the common wisdom is you're only doing therapy with one therapist at a time. Now you might go see a physician, a psychiatrist for your pharmacology, but you don't want to do therapy with this therapist and then therapy with this therapist because you get these mixed messages, like all the different things. Are they on the same page? All that kind of thing. And that's been kind of common training wisdom for as long as I've been around. But I have had the experience in the last several years of working with a number of patients who are working with another therapist.
Wow.
And the therapist says, Curt, I want you to see them because I think they've got some father work that they have to do. They have some male work. They've had some male trauma, and they need to do some work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been really, it's been really beautiful and challenging and stunning to watch some of these changes take place, because they're kind of like, this, not to oversimplify it or whatever, but like they're getting a bit of an opportunity for reparenting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I've had occasion where either I do something that hurts their feelings or make them mad, or I misread them, or I don't understand, or I jump the gun on something or whatever. And it's really something to watch, that event evoke a significant response. And they're even aware enough to say, like, I get it that my response seems a little over the top here, but like, nevertheless, like this is what's going on here. And so we have to pause and take a breath and then be curious and observe, like, what's happening here. And so to your point, like, we're asking the question, how much of this is between you and me, right? Between the person and me, like, and some of that really is. How much of this is between you and your dad, who's in the room? And how much of this is, your genetic heritage, quite literally.
And it's helpful to know. It's helpful to identify that.
Yep.
And even to say to the person, I know this is over the top, but it's where I am. So if we can tolerate that, then it's fabulous.
Right. And it's been really quite stunning to watch people, when they're able to observe, take enough step back to not be in it.
Right.
But to take a step back and observe it. The very act of observing it changes the very experience of it.
Mm-hmm. On both parties, right? The sayer and the listener.
Exactly.
To be able to observe, not react like, this is not about me. This is about whatever. Okay.
Right. And so, like, not to get all like whatever, but, there's the Heisenberg principle in physics that, like, the very act of observing a physical phenomenon changes the phenomenon. Because, when you think about quantum mechanics, like, if you're in the room or if you're watching the experiment, the very act of this affects the experiment. Now, some experiments to greater, to greater or lesser degrees, depending upon the nature of the experiment, but nevertheless. And so what that also means is that if I'm only in the experience and not observing it, but then I step out to observe it, it also changes what's happening.